The drums of war are beating in North Korea after leader Kim Jong-un ordered the military, the munitions industry and the nuclear weapons sector to accelerate war preparations to counter what he believes is unprecedented confrontational moves by the United States. Speaking at a key meeting on the policy directions for the new year, the North Korean leader said the country would expand strategic cooperation with anti-imperialist independent countries. It comes as South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol called for immediate retaliation if there was any provocation from North Korea. President Yoon was visiting a frontline military unit located in the eastern county of Yeoncheon. He has urged troops to immediately crush the enemy's well for provocation on the spot. Staying in the region, China's Taiwan office has warned the United States to stop interfering in its regional election and abide by its political commitments to China on the Taiwan issue. Taiwan Affairs Office spokesperson Chen Binghua was making the call during a press conference. During his appeal, he urged the U.S. to refrain from implementing the negative provisions related to Taiwan in the agreement and immediately stop arming Taiwan, stopping a behavior that destroys Taiwan, harms Taiwan, and to stop intervening in elections in Taiwan. The agreement he is talking about is one that was signed by U.S. President Joe Biden, a defense policy bill that authorizes a record $886 billion in annual military spending and policies such as aid for Ukraine and pushback against China in the Indo-Pacific. Chen also took the opportunity to thank Taiwanese businessmen for contributing over 40 million yuan in donations after an earthquake hit China over a week ago, killing at least 149 people. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Mexico, where he's discussing migration issues between both countries. Mexico has pressed for a reopening of the border crossing between the two, even though U.S. officials want President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's government to reduce migrant flow and cope with record number of people trying to reach the U.S. border. The recent meeting between officials of both sides in Mexico come after more than 500,000 migrants this year crossed the dangerous Darien Gap jungle into Central America, double last year's record, many fleeing crime, poverty and conflict to seek entry into the United States. Well, across the border in New York City, the mayor, Eric Adams, has issued an executive order requiring charter bus companies transporting migrants to give a 32-hour notice before arriving there. He made the announcement during a press conference with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Denver Mayor Mike Johnson, who each demanded more federal support for the influx of migrants into their cities. As part of the executive order, New York City is also requiring that additional information on the population being transported be provided before arrival. Chartered buses will also be required to drop passengers off at a designated location during specific hours.
To better coordinate these arrivals today, I'm announcing an executive order requiring charter buses transporting migrants, those often contracted by the state of Texas, to provide 32-hour notice in advance of their arrival into New York City. To make sure we have sufficient staffing, we are also requiring that these charter buses arrive only between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, and to only drop off passengers at one spot unless directed otherwise by New York City Emergency Management. Failure to do so result in a Class B misdemeanor, possible fines, lawsuit, and even buses being impounded. We cannot allow buses with people needing our help to arrive without warning at any hour of day and night.
Just one more story in the United States, and it's about the miracle of life, a life that was stuck in a crash for 6 days before the victim was rescued. One Indiana motorist who was trapped in his overturned pickup truck for 6 days was rescued on Tuesday, all thanks to two men who spotted the wreckage under a highway bridge while they were fishing. Mario Garcia and his son-in-law, Navardo de la Torre, at first thought that the man identified as 27-year-old Matthew Rome might be deceased when they stumbled on his vehicle, but said Garcia, the moment I touched the shoulder, he swung around and he woke up. We'll leave them to tell the rest of the story.
I looked inside and moved the white airbag, and there was a body in there.
He said, "Get on the phone." I seen the person inside, the occupant, and my first instinct was to call, for help.
And all I seen was this part, the shoulder, and I went to touch the shoulder, and the moment I touched the shoulder, he swung around. He woke up. He says he tried yelling and screaming, but nobody would hear him. It was just quiet, just the sound of the water.
And they had a very difficult time getting down into the creek area with their equipment to basically to cut him out and remove him.
What brave rescue efforts there. Well, let's check in on the global weather now. Heavy rains and floods have left dozens of families homeless in Peru's northeastern region of Loreto. Rains, which began on Tuesday, continued into Wednesday morning, affecting residential areas. Many families were seen trying to rescue their belongings from the floodwaters. The National Meteorology and Hydrology Service has warned that the area is on red alert due to possible further flooding incidents. Over in Australia, the city of Sydney was battered by a hailstorm, bringing more wild weather to the New South Wales state capital after it saw heavy rainfall on Christmas. Video filmed by eyewitnesses showed heavy rain and small hailstones falling on a pavement in a suburban area. Australia's Bureau of Meteorology warned about the possibility of a severe thunderstorm passing over Sydney on Wednesday evening, but forecast the heavy rainfall to ease today. Wild weather had also lashed across a large swathe of Australia's east coast on December 25 and 26, bringing large hailstones and torrential rains. Strong winds blew off roofs and brought down trees in some of the worst affected areas. More than 90,000 households are still without power. And in Europe, unprecedented winter floods from the Danube River in Budapest breached its banks, reaching a decade high of 6.93 meters. While not causing major damage, experts warn of more frequent early floods due to climate change. Climate researcher Anna Kiss anticipates increased winter precipitation and rising temperatures in northern and central Europe, possibly leading to early winter floods. The community actively responded with workers building ramps and deploying mobile dams. And Gabor Egri from the local association says that considering the spring-like conditions, he expects prolonged defense readiness until June. And in the UK, emergency services have been clearing damage caused by Storm Gerrit after strong winds battered parts of the UK. In Stalybridge in northwest England, roads were cleared and a tree surgeon worked to remove a tree that had fallen onto a car. Some houses suffered heavy damage, particularly to their roofs. Storm Gerrit has brought snow, powerful winds and heavy rain to much of Scotland, with homes flooded and travel disrupted. And here in Nigeria, the meteorological agency NIMED has predicted moderate dust haze across the country, from Wednesday to Friday. NIMET predicts horizontal visibility of 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers and localized visibility of less than or equal to 1,000 meters over the northern region. NIMET says moderate dust haze is expected over the north central and inland cities of the south on Thursday and Friday. Hazy atmosphere is also expected over the coastal belt of the country throughout the forecast period. To politics now, European political leaders are paying tribute to a former European Commission President, Jacques Delors, who died yesterday at the age of 98. Serving from 1985 to 1995, he helped create the single market, allowing the free movement of people, goods and services around the bloc. He also laid the groundwork for the single European currency, the euro. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson described him as a towering political figure and architect of the modern European Union. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz hailed Delors as a visionary and an architect of the EU as we know it. Former UK opposition leader Neil Kinnock told the programme he was a very polite, calm, highly intelligent man, a problem solver and not a fanatical federalist as Thatcher tried to portray him. Another of Delors' successors, former Portuguese Prime Minister José Manuel Barroso, who served as head of the EU's executive branch between 2004 and 2014, praised his negotiating skills. Delors served 3 terms as European Commission president, longer than anyone else. His tenure at the top of the EU contributed to the single market, eventually the euro, but also the creation of the Schengen Agreement to travel and the Erasmus program for student exchanges. Now let's bring in legal practitioner Dayo Fadina to talk some more about the late Delors. Dayo, it's great to see you today and compliments of the season. Happy holidays, must I say.
Thank you. Compliments of the season to you too, and good evening, and a big good evening to your viewers.
All right. So while Jacques Delors had such an impressive profile, it appears he wasn't well known across Europe. How was his demise reported in the UK?
Yes, Jacques Delors was quite a very big political giant in his time, particularly when he was the EU president. I think he was the EU president for more than 10 years. He did so much for Europe. He was a visionary. He believed in the integration of Europe. He was a firm believer in the post-war European integration. He made sure that there were so many economic policies that were put in place that enabled Europe to become a very big influence and a big giant all through the world. His legacies, one of the founding fathers of modern Europe, he has so many legacies, of which are, to this very particular day, the European single currency, the euro, the single European market, and amongst so many other things that he did for for Europe. Not quite popular all through Europe. But one thing that you could say about him was the fact that he was quite steadfast in making sure that Europe remains united. We had a track record of 2 world wars, in Europe, and after the Second World War, the European Union was created, and he wanted to make sure that the more Europe is united economically, the better for the whole of the continent, which would more or less prevent another, major war, which has not been the case thus far. But he did so much to unite Europe with his vision, with his energy, with his intellect, and today we thank him for what he actually did for Europe.
Right, you've listed a lot of his achievements, during his time in charge and even beyond that. Has Europe made any great strides since he left office?
Oh yes, because he was one of the founding fathers of modern Europe. So all what was achieved after he left office, the Europe's still been very united economically. Apart from the fact that Britain had to opt out of the EU some 4 years ago now. But he made sure that most of his economic policies were, to do with the progress and the progress, the development, and the betterment of Europe generally. Um, Politically, he was a socialist, and a socialist who believed in the equal opportunities for everybody, including nations. And he wanted to be clear during his time that um, all he wants to do is to at least unite Europe and make Europe one of the most powerful blocs in the world, which he has achieved to date. The EU is one of the most powerful economic blocs in the world today, and if it wasn't for the ground, for the work laid, the solid work laid out by Jacques Delors, that wouldn't have been possible at all. He laid that foundation for the powerful economic unit we have in Europe today.
Right, he was not loved by former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who thought moves towards a federal Europe was an anathema with Britain out of the European Union now. Do you think she was right, especially about the UK joining the EU?
During Margaret Thatcher's time as the Prime Minister of the UK, um, it was very clear that Margaret Thatcher was a little bit suspicious of um, the trajectory that Delors Europe was going. She was quite suspecting of what he wanted to do with political union. She shared the same vision with Delors to do with a single European market, a single economic union in terms of doing things together. But what she was suspect to was his idea of a political union. She never actually wanted that. Um, but at the end of the day, what he then did afterwards was to make most of the European countries understand, in fact, that he's not that keen on having that very political union. All he was more interested in was to have a very powerful economic unit that would actually speak volumes to the whole world in terms of doing things, in terms of making things happen. I mean, a good example of what he did was to do with the Schengen, agreement, where he allowed so many Europeans to be traveling to and fro Europe. There were so many things he did. Indeed, Thatcher. I'm not too sure whether we could say Thatcher was actually right in suggesting that she did not want that she didn't particularly like what he was doing, but the foundation he laid for Europe and what they could do, or what Europe could do in the world, it speaks volumes for us today. So it wasn't the case that I would say she was right. Look at what really happened in Brexit, a situation about four years ago, where the UK the majority voted for the UK to leave the European Union, which the country did. But look at the consequences of that today, economically, politically. There are so many things that were shared together in between the UK and EU. That's not the case anymore. They've lost out so much economically. The economic growth of Europe today, compared the European Union today, compared to the economic growth in the UK, far higher. So these are the things I believe show very, very clear evidence that the country would have been far better off still remaining within the EU than leaving the EU about 4 years ago.
Right, Dayo, I must thank you for your time today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
More than 40 people have been reported killed after a fuel tanker crashed and exploded in central Liberia. Authorities say the tanker overturned along a road in Tortota town, about 130 kilometers from the capital Monrovia. It burst into flames soon after people rushed to the site to scoop fuel from the tanker. A pregnant woman was among the dead, and some of the bodies were burnt to ashes. Video footage shows that a large number of people, including children, had gathered around the tanker after it overturned. Legendary South African musician, playwright and choreographer Bongeni Ngema has passed away. His family confirms that Mr. Ngema died in a car crash on Wednesday night near Lusitiki in the Eastern Cape as he was traveling back from a funeral he attended. Ngema was born in Verulam in 1955, a town just over 20 kilometers north of Durban. Mr. Ngema first plied his trade as a manual laborer and guitarist before he started acting in theaters in the 1970s. His other bodies of work include the movie adaptation for Sarafina and the choir direction of the animation feature The Lion King.
And would like to express our sincere condolences to his family and friends. Ngema's artistic legacy will forever be intertwined with the powerful ability to capture the spirit of resistance and the struggle for liberation during apartheid. His works such as Sarafina and Asina Mali served as a voice for the oppressed and shed light on the injustices of the times. His courage to use his art as a tool for social change will not be forgotten, and his impact on the South African history and the arts community is immeasurable. Ngema's talent and creativity touched the hearts and minds of many worldwide, and his absence will undoubtedly be felt by those who admired and were inspired by his artistry. His legacy will live on through his impactful works, reminding us of his immense talent and the impact he had on the arts. His passion and dedication to his craft will continue to inspire future generations of arts, ensuring that his legacy lives on in the arts industry. Sitilala ngoxolo.
Elsewhere, judges at an unusual beauty parade in Nepal were faced with a tough decision on Wednesday. How do you rate a painted elephant against its rivals? About a dozen elephants were paraded in the tourist city of Saraha after their handlers had spent hours cleaning them, painting their heads with intricate patterns and applying eye makeup and nail varnish. The annual Hati Mahotsav event at the Chitwan Elephant Festival attracted hundreds of tourists as the panel of 5 judges checked each elephant's entrance decorations, obedience, walking style, and cleanliness. This year's parade came after a 3-year gap imposed by COVID restrictions. If you're in New York, you must have seen it by now. The iconic New Year's Eve ball set to drop at midnight of December 31st, welcoming 2024. The new design of the ball was unveiled on Wednesday by organizers. It features a bow tie pattern which was crafted in partnership with the Fontainebleau, renowned for their bow tie motif.
So we're high atop One Times Square, in the heart of Times Square, to celebrate the beginning of a new partnership with Fontainebleau Las Vegas. We actually previewed the ball in a bow tie pattern, which is going to be featured just after midnight on January 1st, 2024.
I'd love to talk about our Times Square ball. It is the largest crystal ball in the world. It is 6 feet in diameter, it weighs nearly 6 tons, and it's clad in over 2,000 crystal triangles. It's this amazing illuminated ball that not only tells us the future, because 2024 is coming, but just brings joy and hope to everyone on New Year's Eve. If you look closely, the crystal triangles have different patterns on them. The gift of serenity, the gift of harmony, the gift of love. But what's really special this year is, thanks to Fontainebleau, we created a new pattern on the ball, a bow tie pattern that reflects the bow tie in Times Square. Times Square was once known as the bow tie, and if you look at an aerial view, it actually looks like two triangles coming together. We've taken that bow tie and we put it on the ball itself to celebrate not only the 70th anniversary of Fontainebleau, but the 120th anniversary of celebrating New Year's Eve right here in New York City, Times Square.
Well, that's our show today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joker Rogers. Good night.